Right to our next big story now. An international conference on rail transport has said that it is important for Nigeria to effectively develop its rail infrastructure.
Delegates say that maximizing prospects in rail's transit system can reverse the current economic recession. TVC News correspondent Ifunaya Eze reports.
It is an established fact that an effective and efficient rail system attracts an enormous freight opportunity and a massive passenger demand. But Nigeria's deficient rail infrastructure has continued to deprive the country of the immense benefit that accrue from that industry. It is in the light of this that experts in rail development convened the first international conference in Lagos themed Nigerian Railway Industry Moving from 19th to 21st Century, Challenges and Opportunities. Speaking at the conference, the governor of Ogun State, Ibikunle Amosu, noted that Nigeria is yet to explore 10% of our rail potential.
Nigeria is the only country, truly, I stand to be corrected, that almost 100% of our goods, our agricultural products, everything are being moved just through the roads. And that's why our road don't last. In other climes, it's through rail. Almost 90% is through rail. They just move some lighter ones through roads. Maybe transporting people, even these days, no, unless maybe they are going for holiday and all this sightseeing. So we should do things in the way that is done anywhere in the world.
Other delegates also stated that a functional rail system would require an effective integration of all the necessary infrastructure.
This country cannot grow, the economy cannot grow if we don't fix our rail system. And for them to have taken that giant step, I mean, it has never happened before in the history of this country for an administration to put in so much into rail system at the same time.
What makes a railway work are the ticket machines, the signalling machines, the communication systems, the electrification, which is a big issue in Nigeria, as we all know, keeping the electricity stable. You can't have the electricity stop suddenly in the middle of a train ride. So all those things need to be assessed and really understood.
The consensus reached underscored support for the various rail projects going on across the country, considering that there are enormous opportunities within the Nigerian rail industry. Ifunanya Eze, TVC News, Lagos.
All right, it would be surprising to many Nigerians that as far back as the 80s, the rail system was very much efficient in Nigeria. But what happened? Where did we drop the ball? And that's what we'll be looking at this morning with our guest, who is the Managing Director of Planet Projects Limited, Biodun Otunla. And also joining us from our Port Harcourt studio is a public affairs analyst, Dan Abia. Good morning and thanks for joining us.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning.
So, the rail system wasn't always as bad as it is today. Where did we drop the ball? What happened?
Well, I think it's a combination of a lot of factors. Okay? As a matter of fact, the situation we have today is such that you're nearly going to have a generation of Nigerians who have not used rail transport before. I tell you, a lot of people that were born in the 80s, okay, up until now, we're looking at about 20 years, 25 years, have not even seen or entered rail transport before. So it's a big issue we're dealing with. I think it's a case of over concentration of attention on road transport. And road transport, as we know, is not a very efficient means of transportation. And so what has happened is rail transport become grossly underfunded, especially when we had the recession in the 80s. So, and we haven't paid the required attention to rail. As a consequence, we have this problem. So it's usually a function of funding, it's usually a function of policy direction, and in most cases, it's also capacity issue. You see, we don't have the right capacity in country in terms of railway. We don't have railway experts. As a matter of fact, as a country, I'm not very sure we have a transport policy, even at the national level. Because most of these issues about railway, about your road network, is driven by national transport policy. And as a country, I'm very aware that we are usually very interested in doing the low-hanging fruits, which is the road transport system. But unfortunately, rail transport does not lend itself to quick wins. It requires long-term planning. it requires strategic framework, and then, of course, implementation. So somewhere along the line, it's a function of policy issue, lack of consistent implementation of policies, and of course funding. Okay, so if you put all of this together, that is why we are today as a country.
All right, let's bring Dan in here. Our guest in the studio said one of the reasons why where we dropped the ball, according to Ngozi, is the issue of funding. But some statistics have shown that between 1999 and 2008, Nigeria has spent or earmarked or given about 125 billion naira to rail system, revamping the rail system. Is it really the issue of funding?
Thank you very much for that question. I carefully listened to the guest there. I do not really think that is funding altogether. I believe that it is on record, rather, that under the government of former President Goodluck Jonathan, we are made to understand that the federal government entered into an agreement with a Chinese firm to the tune of $12 billion to build rail. Now, I do not know what has happened to that money. Jonathan administration planned a 25-year rail system, project in this country. So I do not know whether that project is still ongoing or whether they have dropped it. I think rather than, blaming poor funding, I would say lack of policy framework is the problem here. For instance, now, the present Minister of Transportation in March, was quoted as saying that the federal government was trying to access a $20 billion loan, to reactivate, railway in Nigeria across the country. And out of these, 2.5 billion, we were told, was to be released to work on the Lagos-Kano rail. All right? So I do not know what is happening. It is not funding. For instance, the Calabar to Lagos Coastal Rail, we are made to understand that is in this budget 60 billion. That's what we're told. So, I mean, all this volume of money put together, what have we seen? It's like we are not seeing anything, actually. We are not seeing anything. So I do not think it's funding. Nigeria has money enough to build good railways across the country. And of course, as we know, rail transport is about the cheapest. Now, Nigeria, the South, for instance, is bounded by Atlantic Ocean. And you understand that ships land here. We have a lot of ports here. And then some of the cargoes that are brought from overseas, they need these trains to transfer them to wherever they are going to, not by road. As he rightly said anyway, we have poor road networks. But what can assist our economy, what can help our economy, what can help us fix the economy or stabilize the economy is an effective and a stable rail transport system. So I do not really think it's poor funding. I would rather believe that if there is a political will, I think government can do better than what we're saying here now.
Of course, Dan Abia does believe that it's not an issue of funding. He's talked about what Jonathan administration put in place to revive or revamp the rail sector. And of course, under Obasanjo, you had some $8.3 billion invested, and given to this Chinese firm, the CCECC, to modernize Nigeria's rail system. We'll come to that. Let's take a quick break and return. All right, you're welcome back. You're watching TVC Breakfast, and we're looking at reviving Nigeria's rail system. Our guest in the studio is Biodun Otunla, Managing Director, Planet Projects Limited, and also in Port Harcourt studio is Dan Abia. Before we go on to discuss further with our guests, let's bring you some background facts. Now, the rail is often regarded as one of the safest means of transportation, and Nigeria has a rail system of 3,505 route kilometers and 4,332 track kilometers. The single track network of 1,067 millimeters narrow gauge was built by Nigeria's colonial rulers.
The construction of the standard gauge Lagos-Kano Railway is underway, with the Abuja to Kaduna segment commissioned in July 2016. In the 60s, rail transportation was once the most popular, effective and efficient means for transporting passengers and cargoes in Nigeria.
Agricultural products were transported from the north to the seaports at Lagos and Port Harcourt. Now, years of neglect, lack of maintenance, paucity of funds, lack of manpower and infrastructural decay crept into its operations as development of the railways was abandoned in favor of road transport by successive governments.
At independence in 1960, the Nigerian Railway Corporation had 257 locomotives, 339 carriages and 3,885 freight wagons. By 1995, it dropped to 70 locomotives, 150 carriages and 1,500 freight wagons. Presently, the railway accounts for less than 5% of land transport in the country.
Now, the importance of railways once again becoming glaring and paramount as the highways are not only getting congested and dangerous, but the rising cost of fuel is making it less efficient and uneconomical to move persons and goods. So let's take a look at some benefits of railway transportation. Railway transportation is affordable and safer than other means of transportation. It also has a high haulage capacity.
Rail transportation aids speedy movement of bulky cargoes and long distances. The passenger carrying capacity of the railway is extremely large. Moreover, its capacity is elastic, which can easily be increased by adding more wagons. That's interesting, really. In July 2016, the Senate passed the Nigerian Railway Corporation Bill 2016, seeking to replace the old Nigerian Railway Corporation Act 1955. That's a long time ago.
A really long time. Okay, now the bill sailed through third reading and hopes to revitalize the railway sector and also separate the regulator from the operators. Experts have suggested new strategies such as public-private partnerships, the PPP, build, operate, transfer, BOT arrangements, privatization as possible options for reviving the sector and ensure its stability. Okay, so Biodun Otunla, is the collapse of the railway system tied to the dilapidation that we have found in other sectors of the economy, whether we're talking agriculture, petroleum sector, every other sector?
Yes, well, I think
Is
you're right.
Is there some kind of link?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, there is a lot of linkage between that. You see, what I said earlier, you took me back to history, okay? And you asked, why do we have this problem? I've not said that railway has not been funded. Yes, indeed, the current administration is doing so much at the federal level. We have investment to the tune of $10 billion, all right, on Lagos, Kano, Lagos, Calabar. Lagos State is doing a lot in railway as well. Kano, Kaduna. So everybody, there's a lot of activity going on in the rail industry. But the question then was, why do we have this collapse? And I said one of the main issues was funding. Then. But now we're seeing upswing in the funding issue. In terms of the global impact of the economy, there's so much that we can talk about. I'll give you an example. The cost of moving goods and services within this country, the cost of transportation of that is about 30%. Okay, you have about 30% component of that. In other countries, about 5-6%. All right, the cost of transportation of in your goods and services. So Nigerians are actually paying far more, for this inefficient transport system that we have. And then a lot of goods that are produced from the north, agricultural produce, before you get them down to the south, some of them get destroyed in the process because you don't have effective linkage. And part of the problem also is that if you look at our roads, all our roads are collapsing at a very fast rate because a lot of them have not been designed for these heavy trucks that you see on the road. And there's no country that can survive this kind of situation that we have. We have a country of 170 million people. Unfortunately, we don't have a functional rail system. One of the things we did during the rail conference was we brought out a chart that established a relationship between the GDP growth and the length of functional railway system. And we look at a country like Germany, some of them have as much as 14,000, more than 50,000 kilometers of rail network. And then you can look at the impact of that on their GDP. And look at Nigeria as a country today where we are. Our rail system is not just there. We barely move any cargo through rail. Even those that are being moved, every time you hear of derailment, you hear of lack of reliability. So once all these things happen, all the manufacturers, big concerns, they lose interest. And hence today, we are moving virtually nothing through the rail system. So indeed, it's affecting the whole of the economy. You know, the roads are getting bad. Congestion. I mean, anytime there's congestion on Lagos, Ibadan, watch it. It's largely traceable to some of these trucks, you know. And Lagos, unfortunately, bear the large chunk of this brunt. The crisis we have in Apapa today is also traceable to the fact that we don't have effective rail system. Because all over the world, everywhere you have port, you always must have a rail system to evacuate your goods from the port to the various interland.
Okay.
But unfortunately, the reverse is the case in Nigeria.
All right, let's bring Dan in here. Dan, over the years, from late Sani Abacha to the present administration, one common denominator is what we can notice. Agreements are signed, renegotiated agreement. After some time, the government will travel to a particular country, China, renegotiate the agreement again, and a particular company keeps cropping up.
CCECC.
The question is, can't we look elsewhere?
That is. You see, let me point out this fact. We have two major steel companies in this country. First of all, what is the raw material? What is the major raw material for the construction of the rail track? It's iron, isn't it? Now you have Ajaokuta Steel Complex. You also have Alaja Steel Company in Warri there. So what stops the government from investing into these companies and then upgrading them to produce at least this first raw material, major raw materials first of all? I'm talking about iron now. Then we begin to look for experts that will fix them. You know, if you go to the records, you see that the name of CCECC keeps recurring, as you rightly said. So what is that? So there is corruption in the system, because huge amount of money has been voted out for this same project, yet we don't seem to see anything, nothing tangible about it. We keep hearing amount of money that has been signed, we keep hearing amount of money for a particular project, but we do not see the product or the fruit of that agreement. Therefore, I would suggest that federal government, much as this administration is looking into the revitalization of our rail system, it should also look into the problem of Ajaokuta Steel Company and that of Alaja there in Warri. And I mean, if these companies could provide the first raw materials, as I said, like the iron, the rocks, okay, I mean, it would go a long way. Now, the kind of trains that we are using in this country makes us a laughing stock, really. Now, there are other fast-speed trains that have come up now, in the developed world. Why can't we get those ones and then do away with this old system of train? Now, we need.
Well, Dan Abia, let me cut in there. I mean, some people might even ask you, look, let's just have the trains first before we even start talking about the speed trains. Don't you think? Do you think Nigeria is even ripe for speed trains like you have in Germany, ICE and all the rest of them?
That is a question. We gradually will get there. I have said there are stages. There are stages now. First of all, we have companies like Ajaokuta Steel. Now, how have we developed it? Have we improved the standard of the company? Because if you improve the standard of those companies, you would definitely have the first raw material to work on your rail tracks, like the iron, like the rods. You have those ones handy, so you will not have much. So first of all, we need to construct the rail tracks, and then we can produce those materials by ourselves. That is what I'm saying. Before we now go for gradually from one step to another, we will get there. Certainly, we will get there. But we need to get our rail tracks fixed, well put.
All right. So we have the major components. Yeah. He's talked about iron that we can get from Ajaokuta Steel Rolling Complex. That is another basket case in itself.
Absolutely.
So. Speak to that.
Well, I mean,
and the fact that this particular company, CCECC, continues to crop up. Buhari did travel to China recently, and he's, come up with this agreement with the same Chinese.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, I'm not a spokesperson of the Chinese people.
Yes.
But let's face facts. That the facts are realities. I will tell you the truth. More than 70% of the rail line that have been built anywhere in the world in the past 30 years have been built by the Chinese. Let's accept that fact. Okay. Yes, indeed.
And also, they are the only one that have funds. You know, they have concessionary loans that they can give you to embark on your rail project right now. The West virtually have no money. That's the truth. And I can even give you further statistics. Even the HS2 that's been contemplated in the UK now, the Chinese are on strong contention for it. So they have the money, and they have the technology, and they're advancing. Now, the question is, why do we have the same company cropping up? In fact, to take you back again, they actually started their foray into our rail industry during Abacha, late Sonny Abacha regime. That was when they first came into this country. But we must accept one fact. To build an infrastructure railway system requires long-term planning. This country is run on a short-term basis. Every administration that have come in always have one policy reversed or the other. So lack of consistent policy has been one of the big issues why some of these projects cannot be delivered. So, well, the Chinese might have their own issues as well, but I tell you, I think the bulk of the problem rests squarely with Nigerians. So if you don't have consistent policy, and railway projects are things that you want to do over a period of 10, 15 years, it does take time, both in planning and execution and then O&M. Unfortunately, in Nigeria, every time you have a new government, everybody go back to the drawing board. So once Abacha died, then we started all over again. Obasanjo started his own, and then he ended up pushing to this project. Unfortunately, after the death of Yar'Adua government came, reversed a lot of those policies. The first time I think we have a consistency in policy was with Buhari administration, who took a very bold step of completing Abuja-Kaduna Railway. You know, that was the first time we've seen, otherwise that project would still have been and just hanging there. So we don't know who's going to succeed Buhari government, and then whether they're going to continue again with the same policy. And every time we have a new Minister of Transport also sometime,
comes
also
up
to
with
have
totally
new policy direction. So you can't really blame these guys.
All
because
right,
they've done this to that country.
All right, let's take another quick break and return. Stay with us.
Glad to have you back. It is still TVC Breakfast, and the topic right now is revamping the rail system. It's time to revamp the rail system because of the benefits. Experts have said that over and over again, and two of those experts are with us in the studio. We have Biodun Otunola and Dan Abia from our Port Harcourt studio. A quick question to you now, Dan, before we bring in Foladele here to hear what Nigerians are actually saying about this. The issue of privatization, concessioning, build and transfer, what do you think is best?
Please come again.
The issue of privatization of the rail system. There are a lot of propositions. One is concessioning, build, operate, and transfer. One is complete privatization. Which do you think is best, the way forward?
I think privatization, yes, but before we begin to talk about that, the issue we should do here is what government should do is to ensure that the act of the 1957 Act establishing the Act of NRC should actually be amended to open up the door, to open up the way for individuals to participate in the sector. All right. So I think in the absence of that, if full privatization is what can revamp the railway system, well, why not? After all, other sectors of the certain that has always been done in this country. We have that policy of privatization in the country. So I think if full privatization of the train sector, if it is done, it will. I think I see it, bringing some positive differences into the system, because it's like everybody, when it has to do with government projects, nobody takes serious interest in it. All right, we have seen everything that has to do with government. You see some degree of corruption creeping in. We've mentioned here the amount of money previous administrations have sunk into the sector, and nothing has worked at all. So if privatization would work out, well for Nigerians, and if that would improve and stabilize the train sector, the rail project, I mean, I think it should be done without wasting time. But then, before then, there is a need for the amendment of the 1957 Act of NRC.
All right, Dan. Okay, let's bring in Foladele at this point and find out what Nigerians are saying.
How beautiful is this?
How beautiful it is. I mean, imagine in your lifetime that you will actually go on a train from Lagos to Calabar.
Wow, imagine. That would be a big that would be a big dream come true. Well, good morning, Ngozi.
Morning
Good morning,
to you.
Salami. Lovely to see you. I almost called you Mike because you've been gone for so long.
Excuse me.
And good morning, Biodu. Good morning, Dan, of course.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about what has become of our rail system. Very, very sad, I must say. Let's see how Nigerians are reacting to this one. Okay, Zara Musa says 23 million people use railway transportation daily in India. We need working railways in Nigeria. This is an emergency. Adedamola Damben says, I was told last night railway transport system is now very effective in northern Nigeria and some areas in the south. Proud of my country. And Black says, as far as you and I can't board those trains yet, I don't believe there is railway nor trains in Nigeria. Afefe says, railway in Nigeria is good today because of GEJ. But how many times have you guys had access to these trains? Jenny Naireti says, people keep claiming there are trains in Nigeria, but I have never seen commercial trains in Nigeria. Are these ghost trains?
Perhaps.
And someone replied to that. Taslim Okola replied, he says, I've seen commercial trains a couple of times in Oshodi and Yaba. They're always overloaded with people sitting on the roof. And the last one here from DV maybe, he says, soon as trains become available around all major cities in Nigeria, guess who's going on a nationwide tour? I am.
I am, for sure. I am.
Biodu, would I be dreaming too big to expect that sometime in the near future, maybe we could move from 5% that Ngozi mentioned earlier to maybe 40, 50?
Well, I think it will happen in our lifetime. We have to be optimistic. And one of the things we need to do is that I think the press also have to be on the toes of our government officials. This is the first time, as I've said, that we're seeing a lot of momentum in the rail sector. And the press have a lot of role to play on this so that there's no reversal of policy. Believe me, we can't do rail system on the short-term basis. And our planning horizon is just too short. You know, every time you have a new administration, it takes about 1 year to settle down, another 2 years to do effective administration. So you can't do railway system and plan and then do construction, go to operation and maintenance, all that within 2 years. It's not going to work. So we need something like 10 years. And then every time you have a new government in place, somebody somewhere is tinkering with the system that you meant on ground. So once you do that, then you draw everybody back to square one. So that's part of the big issue why we're still at this point in time. You know?
Okay, Fola, thank you so much. So Dan Abia, do you have concerns that with Buhari having gone to China to reach another agreement with the Chinese, that this might just go the same old way that it has in the past? And going forward, what do you think government needs to do to quickly turn around the rail system so that it actually becomes a major employer of labor? Earlier, when Nigeria's rail was really, really efficient, Busolami, you had about 45,000 employees under the Nigeria Railway Corporation, and now it's barely somewhere around 7,000. Dan?
Yes, please. Yeah, actually, well, Mr. President knows the reason why he went to China to contract this firm for the rail project. That is left for him. You know, like he rightly said, the guest with you rightly said, we need a long-term planning for our rail system. Jonathan had a 25-year plan for our rail system, and that was good. And then when you have this long-term planning, then there must be a certain law that backs it up, so that when this administration goes, the next administration will not come and stop, and stop continuing in that same project to a state of completion. So there must be a long-term planning, as he put it, and then a law should back it up so that nobody stops the project halfway. Now, we are made to understand that Jonathan's 25-year rail plan was to employ about 240,000 Nigerians across the country. Now, in 2003 alone, we made to understand about 5 million Nigerians traveled from Lagos by train to Kano. That is huge. Therefore, there must be a law backing every long-term plan to reactivate, to stabilize our train sector. I don't care to know which country any president will want to go to contract firms, but one thing is that when we have this project, let us ensure that we complete it. I trust President Muhammad Buhari. He is a very strong leader. He is a firm leader, and is a straightforward leader. I want to plead with him to ensure that the train transport is mainly, it is only the poor people, the poor Nigerians that use the train transport. Those of them who are rich, they fly in the air. Therefore, he should make sure before he leaves power, he should reactivate our train system. He should work, he should do anything possible to ensure that it works to its maximum
capacity.
Level.
All right, thank you so much.
It's surprising that the Minister of Transport, before he
Or
came on board,
capacity,
said
yes.
he didn't even know that what we have that wasn't even operational.
Okay,
About the rail system.
unfortunately, we don't have time even to take your last comment on this, but we want to say thank you so much, Biodun Otunla, Managing Director, Planet Projects Limited, and Nabia, our guest from Port Harcourt there, talking to us about reviving Nigeria's rail system. Stay with us, there's more to come. Let's discuss ASU right after this.